recording at that moment. I would ask everybody good evening and welcome to the Town Board of the Town of Ossining regular meeting and special work session for Tuesday, July 26th, 2022. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Councilmember Feldman?
Present.
Councilmember Manicchio?
Here.
Supervisor Levenberg?
Here.
Okay, we have our public hearing on local law regulating bicycles, bicycles with electric assist, and electric scooters in the town of Ossining.
So I just wanted to also recognize that Councilman Meyer has joined us. So thank you for that. First on our agenda, we have a public hearing on a local law to regulate bicycles, e-bicycles or bicycles with electric assist, and electric scooters in the town. At our last work session, we had a lengthy discussion about this local law, but we are still waiting on some feedback from the consultants who helped the Village of Ossining draft a similar law. This is to help move forward with the Project Mover grant that the village is applying for, but would also have positive repercussions for the town to introduce e-bikes, e-scooters, and bicycles as micro-mobility options in the town and in other neighboring municipalities. So I'm going to recommend that we don't close the public hearing tonight until we work out some of those additional details. But if there is anybody here to address the board on the e-bike legislation, you have an opportunity to do so now. Please raise your virtual hand and we will recognize you. And I guess if you call in by phone, can you remind me? Because I did see somebody was on
I
that.
believe our phone call-in is Councilwoman Fields Wheel.
Okay, right. So *6 is if you want to be unmuted, and that's for Councilwoman Fields too. Should she want to be unmuted any time. Otherwise, if you want to be recognized, and we do have one attendee, I'm not sure who that is, but if you do want to be recognized, and that isn't you, Councilwoman Fields Wheel, I'm not sure, then please raise your virtual hand and we shall do so. And seeing no virtual hands being raised, or other hands for that matter, I would ask for a motion to adjourn this public hearing to our August 9th meeting. Might I have a motion?
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, with that, I would ask for a motion to adjourn to our special work session.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. So we have two special work session items on the agenda tonight. We are starting with a presentation from Clean Path New York on the Clean Path New York project, which is set to transmit clean, renewable energy generated in upstate New York to New York City. Earlier today, Clean Path presented the project to the public 2 times during the day at the Ossining Public Library, and a number of us had a chance to join them at various points throughout the day. As this project has the potential to impact the Ossining community, we asked the project team to come to our town board work session tonight, as well as to give an introductory presentation and provide the board with an opportunity to ask questions. So with that, I shall turn it over to, I'm going to say Luke, but I'm not sure, Luke Ball. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Can you hear me okay?
Very well, loud and clear.
Awesome. Thank you for hosting us all day today. It was really wonderful to be in Ossining. And thank you for having us before the board this evening. I really have to say, you know all about our project at this point. I'm so grateful for all of the time and attention you've spent with us recently. So I'm going to share a presentation. I understand that like what we're shooting for here is like a quick 10-minute overview with a little Q&A. Do I have that right? Good. Okay. So let me try to share. All right. So I've got a deck. Can you see it? Beautiful. All right. So thanks again. Just to like alert you to who else is on the call from our team. We have Amy Varghese, our VP of External Affairs. We've got Gordy Gray, Vice President of Development from Invenergy. We've got Frank Norcross, Head of Engineering and all things technical for Energy Re. And we have Matt Powers, who is Head of Government Relations for Invenergy on the Clean Path project, and maybe some others. But the project is called Clean Path New York. The next slide is about the partnership advancing the project. So this is truly a public-private partnership. NYPA, with whom I'm sure everybody's familiar, the State Power Authority, has partnered up with Invenergy, who is the largest developer of renewable energy, the largest privately held developer in the country with a long track record of successfully deploying projects in New York. Is there alongside Energy Re, which is where Frank and I sit. It's a clean energy development firm started out of New York City by the principals of a real estate company called The Related Companies that has done a lot of work around the region and the country. So together we responded to a solicitation that was issued by the state of New York through NYSERDA, which is the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, which was in response to helping the state achieve its clean energy targets under the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. So in 2019, that law was passed. The cornerstone of the law in many ways is a decarbonization of the electric sector across the state. So the targets are 70% emissions-free power by 2030 and 100% emissions-free power by 2040. In order to get there, the state realized that there's a big disparity in the cleanliness of the grid upstate versus downstate. So upstate is 90-something% emissions-free today because of a lot of hydroelectric power in the north, predominantly owned by NYPA. With the closure of Indian Point, the downstate region went from approximately 70-something% fossil fuel to now 92% fossil fuel driven electricity. So on the one hand, very clean, on the other southerly hand, extraordinarily dirty. So you can't hit the targets under the CLCPA when the downstate region is dominated by fossil fuels. And so we responded to this solicitation by the state that was seeking projects that could help remediate that condition. And so our project combines building a huge amount of clean energy across 23 projects located all throughout the state of New York, but all of which are well north of Westchester. Actually, they're well north of Delaware County even, and west. So 23 wind and solar projects all across the state, but north and west. And that's 3,800 megawatts of capacity, which really is a tremendous amount. And then we're gonna build an underground, all underground or underwater high voltage direct current transmission line that connects Delhi in the Western Catskills, starting in Delaware County, all the way down into Queens. And when you look at so that we can deliver all of that emissions-free renewable power down into the downstate region. So all of everything we're doing is contained within the state of New York, which we're very proud and excited about. On the generation side, it's a $7.5 billion investment to bring those online. On the transmission side of the project, it's a $3.5 billion investment to build that part of the project. Because of all of that investment, we create 8,300 jobs throughout the state. When we bring that huge amount of power online, we reduce the total amount of fossil fuel used to generate electricity across the state by 22% every year on average. We save 49 million tons of carbon by 2040, which is when the state anticipates that the electric sector is completely emissions free already. And it's not just carbon that we avoid, it's, criteria air pollutants like NOx, SOx, and particulate matter, which are really the, drivers of a lot of negative health outcomes in frontline communities that have for too long, hosted fossil fuel fired assets in their backyard. And so when you avoid those emissions, those communities see improved public health outcomes, and you wind up avoiding billions of dollars of social and public health expenses along the way. So that's sort of the top line summary of the project. I know it's sort of a brief set of opening remarks. So, just to give everybody a sense of the timeline here, NYSERDA issued the solicitation in January of 2021. We responded in May. It took NYSERDA a couple of months to evaluate all of the responses that they received. We were fortunate enough to be designated in September, by the governor during Climate Week. And then for the next couple of months, we negotiated a contract with NYSERDA, which we executed at the end of November. And the next month in December, that contract was referred to the Public Service Commission, which is the regulatory entity that is responsible for electricity and telecom across the state. And they ultimately they approved our contract so that we could proceed to the next phase of development on April 14th of this year. So we've been conducting outreach and engaging with communities all along the footprint of this project to elicit people's insight and feedback into how we should be thinking about various elements of what we're trying to accomplish. That's all going to inform the next phase of our project, which is a permitting process called Article 7, which is also run by the Public Service Commission. So we're collecting field surveys and a lot of environmental data, doing a ton of engineering to inform the routing of the project, and speaking with everybody who we can to hear their feedback around how the best way to get from here to there might be, which is, I think, what was animating a lot of discussion that we had today at the open house and during previous sessions. We anticipate filing that application in, this fall, probably in October, at which point we will, have a solidified first opening position on a point of view of the routing. As we stand today, we're still doing what's called an alternatives analysis under that permitting process, where we are obliged to study all what we conceive of as all of the materially viable alternatives for the project, from the perspective of what would be the most optimal for the state overall in terms of mitigating community impacts while also weighing environmental impacts alongside of it. And so I know that our time is I don't want to go on and on and on. As the supervisor knows, I can talk about this project as long as you'll let me. A couple of things to note along the way. We're entering into a PLA with our friends in the union world to make sure that all the jobs enabled by the project are well paying with good benefits. We're establishing a community investment fund, which we've committed to doing, which is $270 million, so that we can focus on issues of workforce development, which I know are extraordinarily germane in the region with, for example, the closure of Indian Point. Like, how do we get workers from the previous version of the energy economy well situated in the future that is to come? So a lot of work on workforce development, education, expanding access to healthcare in frontline communities, and a big push around environmental conservation, park rehabilitation, restoration, and beneficial infrastructure development for communities with any sort of adjacency to the project. Like I said, it's all underground or underwater. We're repurposing existing rights of way. Except for where we're in the riverbed, there is no sort of greenfield development involved in this project. It's all where there is a road or an existing transmission line where we're going to put our infrastructure. Nothing that we're planning in the Westchester zone is anything other than a buried set of cables underground. There's, the technology that we're using does have converter stations at either end of the line, which are big sort of substation-like facilities to deal with the power flows. We have one in Delhi and one in Queens. In between, it's just, buried cable to bring the power from here to there. I'll end by showing everybody a map that we showed today at our open houses, because I feel like it would be sort of obviously not right to not talk about this. So, to give you a sense of what we're working through, we come down from the north through a transmission corridor owned, and operated by the Power Authority. It's called the Marcy South Corridor. We're in it for just under 100 miles or so, running from Delhi to Middletown, New York, at which point we get out of NYPA's right of way and we're in, the I-84 corridor, we think, headed to around the Newburgh area where we make waterfall with the Hudson. We're in the riverbed of the Hudson coming down until we get into sort of, the area that is bounded here in this yellow study corridor area, which is where we plan to make landfall in Westchester. The reason why we do that is because just to the south of here is an ecologically sensitive area of the Hudson called Havistraw Bay, which, we understand that needs to be avoided at all costs because it's the sturgeon breeding ground, among other things. And so we get out of the Hudson. We're still studying exactly where it is that we're going to get out of the Hudson there, but we're talking to everybody around there and trying to figure out the most rational way to do it, with the intent of coming on to Route 9, heading south toward this other yellow area to the south here, which, I don't know if you can see, I'll blow it up just so that everybody has a better shot of it. But it should become a real image here at some point. Sorry, technical difficulties. Well, I'm sorry, that's embarrassing. Let's see if okay, how about that? So, we come down 9 and we're in the midst of trying to figure out exactly what the best way to get out of Westchester would be. And, we've spoken with a lot of people in the area. I think everybody agrees that trying to stay out of the center of Ossining, trying to get back into the Hudson as north as we can without disrupting the community is sort of the objective here. It's going to take some study and some discussion with a lot of people to align on exactly the right way to do that. But that's sort of our strategy at the moment, is to avoid the community as much as we can, while also preserving the environmental sensitivity in the ecologically sensitive areas of the river where we know we just can't be. And so I think I'll leave it there. I'm sorry I went a couple of minutes over, but I thought it was important to walk you through what we were thinking and what we've been discussing. And I'm interested to hear everybody's feedback.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I have had the opportunity to ask many, many questions. This is, and I know Councilman Feldman joined today and also had a chance to ask some questions. I'm going to just open it up to the other town board members to ask any questions they may have. I will come back around if you don't ask any of the questions that I've already asked or suggestions. I think, ultimately, I just want to say that bringing clean energy down to this area is critically important. And while nobody wants anything to impact their communities, which is all of us, except positively, at some point, it's possible that some of us will have to be impacted. Finding the way to do the least harm to the most people, I think, is the objective of all of us. And as local municipal officials, we're always going to be looking out for our constituents. And then again, from the broader perspective, we know that's happening all up and down the Hudson. So I think we're looking for, any chance that there's a win-win for our constituents, any chance that there's access, improved access to open space, improvements that can be made ultimately as a result of this project. And I do, want you to talk a little bit about some point about how does Westchester actually stand to benefit if the energy is going from Delhi down to Queens and ultimately benefiting New York City. What's in it for Westchester?
Yeah, you want me to take that now?
Take that and then we'll open up to questions. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of what does Westchester stand to gain from this? Well, I mean, first, as my colleague Frank spoke about at length today during the open house, the electric grids of Westchester and New York City are pretty much tied together and look and feel very similar to one another. And, to the extent that you reduce fossil fuel fired generation down in the city, you're also lessening the amount of fossil fuel being used throughout the region. So in our emissions reduction analysis, a sizable chunk, 10%, is allocable directly to reductions from fossil fuel generators in Westchester. Beyond that, when you deal with the congestion that has been plaguing this part of the system for some time now, and you bring a new transmission link, as we're doing, it opens up pathways for more renewable energy to flow into the area naturally. So you should see a larger penetration of renewables. In addition to that, we're committed to local hiring practices, running workforce development and apprenticeship programs and job transition efforts, so that there can be local employment in a meaningful way that happens as part of what we're doing. And then beyond that, there are several different opportunities for us to work with communities that are adjacent to what we're trying to do any number of improvements and interventions and programs along the lines that I articulated earlier through this community investment fund. I think that there's actually a quite significant amount of good work that we can do together. And I think, in my mind, it sort of goes without saying, but it's certainly important to stipulate at the outset that to the extent we're doing any construction in any given area, we would always leave the area where we are installing any infrastructure in a better situation than where we found it. I think it's really important. We've heard feedback from communities in the region that have been, less than impressed by other utility companies in the area and the way that they leave projects behind. We're committed to, doing everything that we can do to coordinate with the communities to articulate and make known when activity will be occurring, what to expect. And, we're really committed to leaving everything better than when we found it to begin with, and being strong partners throughout the whole process.
Okay, great, thanks. And I'm just going to open it up now to the board. Is there anybody who has questions about the project?
As some of the people here might know, I happen to work in Sandy Galiff's office. So this has been a topic of conversation in our office. As you can imagine, I know you saw her earlier today. So I don't have any questions at this time.
Yeah, we also appreciate the assembly members' engagement on this. Your office has been great.
Councilman Minichio, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I mean, this is strictly underground, correct? There's no opportunities for these to be run above ground at any, during your path from Delhi to Queens?
Yeah, that's the strategy. I mean, so the feedback we received early on from everybody was that there's a benefit to having it located underground in terms of hardening the electric sector against more extreme weather events that we've been observing are more frequent as the threat of climate change or the reality of climate change sets in. But in addition to that, doing overhead transmission in New York, it's just a really tough proposition at this point. I mean, I think all things being equal, underground is probably better from basically every perspective, except maybe it's more expensive to build it. But that's our problem.
Mhm. And would it lay down on the riverbed, or are you thinking about digging deeper into the river when you're in the river?
Yeah, so we're studying. So the way that you have to approach so here's like the quick fix on the river. In the shallows, it tends to be a more ecologically sensitive area, and there's an environmental impetus to not be in areas that are too shallow. When you get into the deeper water, it's more of the commercial maritime activity, boating channels, and you have to be sensitive about anchor strikes and where you're placing the cable there. So we're evaluating, both zones and sort of how to live in harmony with everybody. In terms of the depth of burial, what we're doing now is we've conducted what's called a geophysical assessment of the riverbed. So you have a boat with a scanner that gives you like a topographical image of the riverbeds so that you understand exactly what you're dealing with. The next phase that we're going to mobilize in the fall is a geotechnical campaign so that we get, vibrocore, sediment samples that we can understand the heat dissipation of, and the, makeup of various riverbed areas. And then based on all of that, you're able to understand what your target burial depth may be, and what mobilization method you would use to bury the cable. So there are a couple to choose from. I think like going in, sort of standard assumption is that you're looking at a burial depth of about 6 to 7 feet. Obviously, when you're in an area where there is a lot of commercial activity, there's an argument to be made that deeper is better, but it has to do with technical feasibility and the type of technology that you can use to get the cable in the riverbed.
Good. Understood. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Councilman Meyer, do you have any questions?
No, and I'm a bit familiar also, just finished working with the state legislature, so a bit familiar from that.
Great. So I thought that might be the case. Councilman Feldman.
Has more questions. I wouldn't hate it if for our people who watch the meeting and the people who will watch the video of the meeting later, that you wouldn't kind of skim over. I don't know that you're the person I was talking to for the whole time, but I mean, first, Croton Bay is also sensitive and a breeding ground for the sturgeon, as is Haverstraw. So they're similar with the added thing that the Croton River is right there, and many fish migrate up that, including eels, to breed. So I'm interested, how are you going to cross Croton River? I didn't get a chance to ask that.
Yeah, so I mean, the study area, let me actually just share this with you again. I think you were talking to Frank.
And to table on that, a lot of people go kayaking, paddleboarding underneath those bridges. And would you limit access for the access to Croton River from the Hudson River? that's another consideration that has to be thought about.
Yeah, so I mean, you're council member, you're quite right. There's, if we were going to contemplate coming down 9 here, there is a crossing of the Croton River. Now, we've looked at that, that's a tough crossing. If we were going to have to do that, we'd probably do a trenchless crossing under the river. I don't think that there's anything that we're contemplating that would impede anybody's access around here at all. I just want to be clear that even though this yellow area covers the Croton Bay, it's really the yellow area is supposed to highlight the upland areas that are under consideration. We have no plans to be anywhere in the Croton Bay. We agree with you and understand that it's a sensitive zone that we're looking to avoid. So what I hope to be able to accomplish is figuring out a way to get out into the river without having to get to the Croton River crossing. That having been said, we've done a lot of thinking and analysis on it. And I think that to the extent we had to deal with that, there is a way that we could do so in a trenchless way, getting under the river entirely and not impacting it.
How do you get
Okay.
under the river without trenching?
What's that?
How do you get under the river without trenching? I'm not, like, I can't picture a trenchless way to get under the river. What's that?
Yeah, so I can speak to that. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for first giving us the opportunity to speak with you again. Appreciate having spent this time with you. So we have been in discussions with the folks at Historic Hudson Valley there by the Great Pumpkin Blaze, which we are fans of and can't wait to attend this fall to set up for the crossing. So we have done a site visit with the team there. We would do, any crossing of the Croton River would be trenchless. The challenge is how to set up for it and get it done, but we would look to set up potentially, if we had to, in that parking lot, and then exit on the south side of the Croton River there at the end of Croton River Road. A number of different sort of commercial industrial concerns there. We've had the engineering teams taking a look at that crossing. As Luke mentions, it's challenging. We think it's all, it's executable, but that is all predicated on if we did a crossing of the Croton River, because obviously that ending up on that side of the Croton necessitates a different set of paths to get back to the river. So our preference is to not have to do that crossing.
Yeah, but so to further elucidate, the way that you would get a trenchless crossing done is a technology called a horizontal directional drill. I mean, there are a couple different ways that you could do it, but I think what we would do is set up this drilling rig. It essentially starts on land and starts boring underneath the land and heads down under the riverbed and then comes up on the other side of the river. So that's how you sort of that's probably the preferred method. There are a couple of different ways to do it, but I think that's what we'd be looking to study. I mean, that is what we're studying.
I'm going to toss back to Councilwoman Feldman.
Thanks. I would appreciate if you would briefly, for people who were not in our conversation earlier today, go over why the Indian Point transmission lines that you come on shore are very close to, and why the Metro North corridor are not something you're looking at.
Frank Norcross.
Yeah, so that's a sort of a two-part question. The first question is, why not use the existing infrastructure that's there? And the sort of, it's a really good point, and it's one place that we started with in this project. The problem is that regardless of the fact that Indian Point is now offline, the power is still required by New York City, and there are two projects whose sole reason for existing on the grid two natural gas fired power plants, CPV Valley and Cricket Valley, exist to backfill the power that would have otherwise been provided by Indian Point using those lines. And so from a reliability perspective, those lines are already spoken for, already being utilized. And so it's not possible to repurpose those lines because of that utilization. And then, obviously, given that we utilize the existing NIPA corridor to come out of Fraser and Delaware County and down to Middletown, the question is obviously, why not simply join the Con Edison transmission corridor from Indian Point through to New York City, which is an excellent idea. The problem is that as you sort of play that forward, where you end up is at a large substation just outside Yonkers called Dunwoody. And you are faced with something like 10 miles of very dense residential communities that you have to work your way through in order to get to Queens to have the sort of impact that we need to have with this project. You're a couple of miles inland from the Hudson River across the communities of Yonkers. You're at least 5 miles from being able to touch the Long Island Sound when you're down there. So there are not any good options when you get down to the vicinity of Dunwoody, which is why we have not adopted that as sort of the proposed route at present. But certainly something that we've looked at will be part of our alternatives analysis in the Article 7 application. And so we appreciate you raising the point to sort of give us a chance to explain our thinking behind it.
And just to tag on to that, like you couldn't exit like the cross county or something like that would take you.
Yeah, I'm
over the-
looking at the map. It looks like you could come back to the river and avoid, a lot of infrastructure building and disruption if you came back across the cross county, as the supervisor is saying.
Yeah, I mean, if you have, I mean, if there are options that you think that we've not put eyes on, by all means, please call them out and raise them up to us. We're happy to have our engineering teams take a look through what might be viable. So.
Right, and
mean,
I just reiterate that the mayor, Mayor Levin this morning did bring up the question of, why you're going down the Hudson versus going down Long Island Sound, which would get you closer to Queens. So if you're already going across the I-84 corridor, you could continue theoretically going across and get over the Sound that way and then go down towards Queens. But I don't know if any of these are realities. And I think the point isn't necessarily to find other communities to impact. It's just to find, the safest route of least impact overall.
No, I think that's absolutely right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the MTA corridor, we also talked to them and they indicated that there was no availability within their right of way to accommodate the project.
All right. All right, next question. Should you put it down the east side of the river? Would it interfere? There are a lot of boat clubs up and down the Hudson River that need to be able to dredge, especially after these superstorms. And you really need to take into consideration, I know we just had this conversation, but to install something that wouldn't allow dredging would effectively end recreational boating in the Hudson, or at least on our side. So you would have to, if you are within the areas that the boat clubs need to dredge, make accommodations for that, or stay out of the areas where the boat clubs would need to dredge to remain operational.
Yeah, so thank you for posing the question for the group here. As we discussed, that is certainly one of the constraints in addition to the ecological concerns that we've discussed and the impacts on other commercial and recreational navigation of the waters. That, at the end of the day, that all finds a home in the analysis that we call the cable barrel risk assessment that is part of the Article 7. That would go into great detail about constraints like that. and how we would address ourselves to them to make sure that there's no conflict there. Certainly not our intention, and will not be, in our aim to be an impact to recreational boating. We expect that we will have no impact outside of the construction period on them. But, again, the geotechnical campaign, which because of the ecological concerns has to wait until September, would help inform the final routing in the marine environment that we're going to find. And certainly this is one of the equities that we have to balance as we go through the process. But appreciate the call out, and certainly something to be mindful as we're proximate to the coast there.
And then the other things we had conversations about were the magnetic field that comes off of transmission lines of this nature. And you said you're working with the DEC about the impact it would have on migration of fish. So I'm interested to hear more about that as you have those conversations, and that you're in conversations with the Hudson River Pilots Association and the Tug and Barge Association about where they feel the need to throw anchors in an emergency and their anchorages, and making sure that they don't feel that they need to run aground instead of hitting your cable, causing a much bigger ecological disaster. So I'm interested to follow in on your plans, locations, and how they feel about that.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, I think we've had very positive interactions to date, both with at the harbor, operations and the river operations. A lot of impact, a lot of input from the DEC, a lot of input from folks like Ian Corcoran, a lot of input from folks like John Lipscomb at Riverkeeper about how to balance these equities in the marine environment. But yes, we will certainly be coming back to you to talk further about the concerns you just listed.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to reiterate also the point that I've made to you a couple of times, which is not the one you think, Frank, but the point about environmental justice communities that have taken the brunt of the hit of, possibly in many cases, dirty environmental generation, energy generation, and or sewer treatment plants. A lot of things that have been cited in Ossining, in parts of Cortland, and Buchanan, and obviously in Peekskill, and that we make sure that we're not just looking at the same communities over and over and over again and hitting them with more negative impacts. I'm not sure, I'm still not 100% sure I understand what the real negative impacts are. I haven't heard really from from a lot of the environmental advocacy groups anything that's really been loud yet about this. And I know you've been meeting with a number of them. I think I had asked if you met with Clearwater and Scenic Hudson, as well as I know you've talked about Riverkeeper a number of times. Obviously the DEC's oversight, and there are a number of other groups that have been working on making sure that the pipeline siting doesn't interfere with nuclear storage and other things that could all come together to create potential catastrophe. We don't want to be in that position ever again. It's unfortunate that we are currently in that position now, and we want to make sure that however it is that you're looking at this, that you're doing your best to avoid those negative impacts, as I mentioned at the beginning. And again, I've gotten a lot of my questions answered to date. I do think I feel positive about this project. Just figuring out obviously all the details, that's where the devil is, as we know. So I hope that we can continue to work together with all the communities in the area that will be impacted to come out with a win-win, as I said already. Are there any other questions? We do have our Valerie, I know you're not on, but Valerie's our planner, and also Christy Adana is our counsel to the town. And if either one of you, or Dan Ciarcia, who is our engineering consultant, if any of you have any questions, pertinent to this project, please feel free to ask them as well.
Yeah, I have one more quick question. Have you looked at going down the west side of the tracks that are not electrified? The tracks on the other side of the river?
Yeah, so I think you're referring to the CSX rail bed that Champlain Hudson originally used. Yeah, so that will be amongst the alternatives analysis submitted with the Article 7. We have taken a look at that. We think that for the similar reasons that Champlain Hudson decided not to route in the rail bed, that we think that it similarly will be not feasible, but we have reviewed it. We will be sort of in the Article 7 explaining our thinking about specifically why we think that's not a viable path.
Thank you.
And Valerie, Christie, or Dan?
I actually don't have any questions. I've been involved, been attending the meetings, and I'm familiar with this project. And I'm working in a couple other communities that are also potentially affected by this project. So I am paying attention very closely.
I'll certainly be weighing in as we get down to, detailed plans, and we can review the route, but this point obviously is very conceptual.
Christie, anything from you? No. Okay. Are there any other points that you wanted to make based on any of the comments you heard today in Ossining or along the way that you think might be interesting for this anybody watching?
Just I got a quick plug. So I know we kind of said it as a tongue in cheek, but I did actually go talk with Scott Craven, the reference librarian at Ossining, about his book. Croton Point Park is coming out August 1st, this Monday. Mine is already pre-ordered, so it's going to head this way. And I would entreat you to to support your local author. So.
Yes, and our local town historian. He happens to be also our town historian, and just in addition to being a research librarian and a retired police captain as well in Ossining. I don't think it was completely tongue in cheek, because he obviously, I know that you've talked about meeting with SHPO, the State Historic Preservation. Whatever it was. And I think he actually may have a lot of insight as to where the quote unquote landmines are, and he spent a lot of time giving tours in that park, because I've been on a lot of them, and I think he knows probably quite a few of the important archaeologically sensitive points.
Yeah, I also had a chance to catch up with him for a while. He was like, somebody up there must have given the game away. But he is like a wellspring of information. It's unbelievable. And an awesome guy. I couldn't believe it. So yeah, we're certainly going to be following up with him.
I appreciate you taking all of our suggestions to heart, very much so, and again, continuing to work for a positive outcome.
Look, I mean, like the last thing I'll say is that with all of the sort of global geopolitical turmoil around gas and energy, coupled with what we were seeing in the last couple of weeks with extreme heat all over the planet, like it really does agitate for somebody doing something about bringing our energy supply more local, to insulate ourselves from these crazy commodity price swings that we see every day, and doing so in a way that really benefits our communities and the world. And that's what we're trying to do. I know it sounds like a lofty ambition, but it's a big project. And if we were, when we collectively work together to figure out how to get it done, I think we're all going to be like very proud and happy of the result.
Not lofty at all. I mean, I spent a lot of time when I was actually working for Assemblywoman Galiff, looking at the impacts of hydrofracking on communities and how all of that drilling can actually negatively impact communities. And I know that that the fossil fuel industry really can have severe negative impacts. And again, I hope that we can find a way to make this quite the opposite. And I just only wish that more of our federal dollars and our federal priorities had been put into citing clean energy and building clean energy future a lot long, many years ago, like 50 plus. So in any case, onward. And again, please keep us updated and, you know, keep us in the loop. We appreciate it. If you are planning to have additional public forums, and you can send those our way so we can let everybody know. And I do believe you also have information in Spanish, and you said maybe coming up in Greek and any other languages, maybe that you're going to be, you know, in communities where you're having a major impact. Obviously, translating any of your materials, I think, is very much appreciated. And so that people can ask questions and get answers. So thank you again. Unless are there any other further questions from any of the town board or anybody else on this, I guess, call? Okay. With that, I thank you very much. And again, look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Bye.
Okay, so did I finish up on that? I think I did. With that, tonight the town board is also going to be discussing another project that has the potential to impact our community, and that is the River Knoll Supplemental Draft Environmental Impact Statement. And any comments that we, the town board, would like to submit to the planning board, who is lead agency on this project, as part of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, which I guess we sort of talked about a little bit. It's kind of similar to the Article 7, I guess, in many ways that the Clean Path project is required to do. I'm going to turn it over to our planner, Valerie Menostra, to help kick off our conversation. And just to show everybody, this was definitely really fun summer reading. This is the draft environmental impact statement. So
Don't forget the other volumes.
yes, of course. This is
about a
the
third of
latest
it.
and greatest. I don't know this. I'm hoping that's not the epilogue.
There's 2 more in the clerk's office that append that one.
Yes.
So, well, let me just give you a little background as to where we are in the process and then what our sort of goals for tonight. So the draft environmental impact statement was considered complete by the planning board and open for public review. By saying that something is complete, basically what they're just saying is that there was an overall scope that was adopted by the planning board, which is basically an outline for the draft environmental impact statement, and which when we got the different drafts of the draft environmental impact statement from River Knoll, we went through that outline and basically check marked whether they included information on that particular environmental topic area. Now we are in the process of actually doing a substantive review to the draft environmental impact statement and looking at the information that they provided and identifying some additional information that might be needed, additional analyses that might be needed, or questions or concerns or comments that we have on the draft environmental impact statement. So the planning board held a public hearing last week, and they are taking public comment till September 6th on the draft environmental impact statement. So you, as an involved agency, can put forth any comments, questions, concerns that you have on the project, what's written in the environmental impact statement. There are no right or wrong, questions or comments. It's really just a matter of, what are your concerns? What do we want to have the applicant make sure that they are addressing? And then in the meantime, Dan, myself, and then I have Andrea Connell here from Kimley Horn, who's undertaking the traffic analysis. We'll be doing a substantive review on the various environmental topic areas, also raising some other issues and concerns. And then I'll be meeting with the planning board on August 17th, where we will also do basically a session similar to this tonight to also get their comments and their thoughts on the overall draft environmental impact statement as well. So with that, why don't I open it up for, let's start with any comments, questions, or concerns. And I just want to also explain one other thing. So this is technically a supplemental draft environmental impact statement. So as you go through this document, you'll see it keeps referring to the former project. The former project is the multifamily project. So now they're proposing 95 townhome units as opposed to the single multifamily building that was proposed prior. So throughout the document, they kind of compare the impacts of the townhouse unit to the multifamily unit.
And sorry, before the board weighs in, Valerie mentioned that the town board is an involved agency, and the reason for that is because as part of this project, the applicant is going to be seeking to have the property zone changed. So currently the property is zoned R15. With the former project, the multifamily residential development that Valerie mentioned, the applicant was proposing to create a new multifamily zone. With this current proposal, the townhome proposal, there is no need to create a new zone, and the project can go forward. At least that's how it's indicated in the supplemental draft environmental impact statement, by applying the existing multifamily zone that's currently in the town code to this property. So that's the jurisdiction of this board in considering this application. But because you are an involved agency and that you will make a discretionary determination, we believe that it's appropriate and prudent for the board to review the DEIS and provide your comments so that they can be addressed by the applicant and the planning board in the final environmental impact statement phase.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And as you mentioned, this project has been before the town board and planning board for a number of years, I think since 2015, maybe even 2014. It looked a lot different at its start, and then it has evolved after much review and feedback. And now the proposal is for these 98 townhomes, of which I believe 10 would be affordable within the requirements of town code for affordability, a 10% set aside. And that's at 60% area median income. And did I say, and it would be for 55 and up occupancy would be required. And that, again, that is the proposal that's now before the planning board, that's up for consideration for the town board to apply that multifamily zone to this property. This is the former Stony Lodge Hospital that is on Hawks Avenue and is bordered by a number of other streets. It's in a residential community, and again, that's sort of just the basic overview. Councilwoman Fields-Tweel, you have your hand up.
Yes. So I'm, as most of you know, Valerie too, I am the newest member of the board, only since February, so I have not been privy to the other.
Yeah, I hadn't quite finished my intro yet, but you had your hand up, so I.
Oh, no, then you go.
Okay, so anyway, that is what I was going to say. I was going to say that the town board, as it was constituted when this other project was, had been proposed when the original version of the project with the rental, that was all rentals, market rate rentals with 10% set aside for affordable rentals. That was proposed. We did have a different makeup of the board. I believe Councilman Meyer may have joined for the tail end of the town board reviewing of that project. And then the applicant sort of went back and sort of in between that time and now. We had COVID, and COVID definitely changed the landscape of apartment living, and maybe gave our applicant some food for thought. which is, I believe, one of the reasons that he came back with this townhome. So again, I know that the board has changed since then. And again, I don't know that Councilman Meyer had a lot of time to weigh in. Councilman Minichio and Councilman Fields Toohill are both new to the board since this project has been before the board. And this is really the first opportunity that we'll have had to weigh in. So this is an opportunity for you to, any of the review that you did of this very large document, is appreciated, and any comments that you have, I think this is the time to speak about them. So Councilman Fields Toohill, since you had your hand up, please go first.
Yeah. So in addition to reviewing this very large volume, we were also given a copy of maps, multiple maps. And I've reviewed those as well. Some people may or may know that I live in the unincorporated area where this is going to be located. And so I live closest to this future development. The one question I have is, even though they changed it to 55 and over, some of the condo local residents want to know, does that mean that all residents in the unit have to be 55? So could there be, a couple move in, one is 55 and one is 35, or do everyone that resides there have to be 55, at least adults, obviously? That's one question that came up. The other is, it's my understanding, something that's been taken off the table since the last iteration is redesign of the intersection, and working with DOT, talking to constituents in the unincorporated area. That's been very disappointing for them. Looking specifically at the maps that they provided, I'm curious if, they're removing a lot of trees. They do show that they're going to plant trees, but they're not planting mature trees. So I'm curious if they could possibly save more trees that are in the front of each unit, as opposed to saying they're planting new trees, which will be, I don't know, a foot tall. Not the same thing. Also, the iteration that they're showing now is going to have more impervious space, which means more stormwater. And so I'm curious, what is that? How is that going to affect our stormwater drainage? They said that there's going to be a green buffer. I'd like to better understand, what does that look like? And so the whole development is going to kind of be built up on a crest. And I'm curious, is that going to be visible from the local area? Like, how high is this development going to go? Because they are adding a lot of dirt and a lot of materials in order to build it up. So I'd like to know how high it is. And, the pictures that they supplied in the book, they're giving examples of like what it could look like. And then they give pictures of examples of developments that they've already had. While I appreciate those being included, I really have to ask to take a look at them, because they, in my estimation, and I'm a condo resident, they look tremendous. These don't look like townhomes, or at least the ones that are located in Ossining right now. So yeah, I'm curious how the stormwater is going to affect the stormwater treatment plant, and
We don't have.
I think that's it. I think that's it for now.
Okay. I'm not going to try to defend the project anyway, but I did spend quite a lot of time reading through the DEIS also. And I do think that a number of those questions that you asked specifically were addressed in terms of height And, in terms of stormwater, there is a SWIP or a stormwater. I can't remember the
Pollution
acronym.
prevention
Right, so I
plan.
think there is a stormwater pollution prevention plan, but I think in terms of our conversation tonight, it probably will be, instead of us, that the applicant will be responding to each and every question. So if something has already been addressed in the DEIS, they will just respond that it has been addressed and where it has been addressed.
Okay, got it. So like,
I'm-
yeah,
but
I'm happy if they respond with, please see page XYZ.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Okay,
And that's what they will do that. I do want to follow up on a couple questions or a couple of comments you made. One dealing with the Route 134 redesign. So I have Andrea here this evening, and she can talk a little bit about the type of analysis that she'll be undertaking in because there's clearly a change from undertaking the redesign. Planning to undertake the redesign versus what they're proposing now, which is not doing the redesign. But I also wanted to follow up then if you had any specific questions relating to that redesign in terms of, I know there seemed to be some community concern, but is there anything in particular that you want the applicant to be able to address? Or maybe there's a particular element of that redesign that you would like them to look into a little bit more. So Andrea.
Well, yeah, I have not had a chance to look at their prior iterations, so I don't know what exactly they were proposing that I could grab a piece of and ask, could you still do this? It's my understanding that the whole redesign and working with DOT has been taken off the table. So I'm just suggesting that that's not the best way to go forward, in my opinion. And maybe I'll ask if it's possible, I can get a copy of the prior iteration so I can see what it was gonna be. I haven't, I only have what I know.
Right.
So it's hard for me to ask. I don't know what to ask. I have to, see the prior plan.
I'm
Just
gonna
to-
speak to that.
Oh, okay, I was gonna, go ahead.
Okay, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I think that the main concern is that there are, and you would know this, obviously, Councilwoman Fields, that there is a lot of traffic that is trying to go across 9A, especially at, when school is, in the morning, rush hour, and also when people are trying to get to school with the school buses and with, everybody going here and there, that it is a dangerous intersection. There was, a right turn lane coming if you're going sort of east-ish on 134 and making the right by that hot dog truck. It was going to be made into have a turning lane there, and I think that I can't remember actually what happened on the other side, but that was it's possible that there was also. Go ahead, Councilwoman Feldman, a left turn lane.
There are left turn lanes proposed on
Right.
both sides that would really
Right.
get cars out of the way, stacked up so that people making the right turn. can
Yeah,
continue.
if I may say, that intersection, and anybody can talk to the Austining Police Department and find out how often there are accidents in that intersection in the amount of traffic that there is now. And that happens not just during school day, it happens in the evening. I've had conversations with OPD trying to find, I guess you want to say, patterns. There's accidents happen in that intersection at all different hours of the day. Anyway, my point is, as the supervisor said, it is a dangerous intersection, and they're proposing something that's going to be located really close to the intersection, adding more cars and traffic. And so I'm only here since February, but I'm curious as to why they think it's okay to take that off the table.
Sure. And now, do you want Andrea to speak to that?
Sure. So I wasn't involved in the review of the previous development for it, but so one thing that the scope had in there is that was one of the study locations. So they're looking at the existing conditions for the intersection, how it operates today, And in the future, they're going to look at, I think it was 2025 is the year that they would be built. So they're looking in the future without the project being built and in the future with the project being built. So the difference between the future with it and without it would be their impact. So how much delay, how much does the delay increase at the intersection? And regarding the safety of it, they also have done an accident analysis, so we will be reviewing that. So they've looked at least 3 years of accident data, and done some tabulations to see the type of accidents that are occurring, where they occur. Is it all in one direction? Are they right angle crashes, rear end crashes, that type of thing? And I do know from personal experience driving through there in rush hour that there's a lot of delays there. And typically, because it's a state highway, 9A is the higher value roadway because of the traffic that travels on it. So most of the green time that the traffic light gives out would be on that. So the side street, the 134, would be the areas that suffer. So I know it's one lane in each direction on 134. So the previous proposal for the larger development on the property was to add turn lanes on the side streets. So when we go through our review, we're going to look very detailed. We're going to pick through everything and just see the type of impact that this new development will have at that intersection, and then just see if there's some type of improvement that could be done there.
Okay. And also, Valerie, I don't know if you can speak to the residents. Do all residents have to be 55 and over, or only one?
So that's going to be something that we've raised already. They are proposing to have it according to the Older Persons Act. And so they will be providing us some additional information as to how that relates. But they are proposing at this point in time not to have any school children as part of the development.
Well, I know, but that's, you can't plan for that. There are people that have children at older ages now. I'm not understanding. Either it's in there that all adult residents have to be 55 or no. It's I think it's pretty
Well, typically a lot of these affordable the older persons housing or senior housing requires one of the adults to be 55 or older, but we will have them make sure that that is being specifically detailed in the EIS.
Okay.
Yeah, the way, just from what is said in this, on one of the pages that will be referred to, it did actually say that if they found anybody who was younger than that, they would not be allowed to stay. So.
Okay. I'm still not clear, but I'll get clarity later. And the other last question I have is the 10 units that are going to be affordable housing. If you take a look at the map, you can see that there's one building that has smaller units than all the other buildings. And I'm just curious if that's the building that they are going to be using affordable housing, or is it going to be spread out throughout the development?
Okay. I'll make that note too.
Thank you.
Alrighty, I'm going to turn it over to Councilman Minichio.
Hello, thank you. So a couple of questions that I have looking back. I look at the alternative pages and it says it's mostly comparing to the R15 zone. But when I look at the project and what it's surrounded by, the communities are 7.5, S50, S125, and S50. I was looking to see if there's any chance that if he was to use those zonings in the area, what kind of layout would be possible, as he did in the R15.
The others, I think some of the zoning you're referring to is in the village, right?
Yeah, so there's no town for the S7.5, because that's on some of the town residents, like Grandview and all that, is that 7.5 or 7.5?
Some of them are. Just pull
And
up.
then there's an R20, even if to compare it to that instead of just R15.
Right, so they did look at the there is an alternative D is an R5 layout, which is the 5,000 square foot lots. Then the alternative B and C is the R15 zoning, which is the current zoning.
All right, and then the next thing would be the schedule of his construction. You know, it says right here, 18 to 24 months. Just trying to see how the schedule will go in those 18 to 24 months, a more detailed type
Yep.
of layout.
Okay.
And last but not least, just to see what benefit would the town get with this project at the end of when it's all done.
Is there a specific benefit besides just the general ones that, you know, could be theoretically mentioned by the applicant? Is there something specific that you think that the town should be getting?
Well, looking at the alternatives, if it was an R15 layout zoning change or something like that, can compare the two? Can they compare somehow and see what would the benefit of the village be at the end of the project?
Right, so we are part of the planning board's thoughts on the alternatives, especially a number of these alternatives were from the original EIS. But then the planning board really wanted them to take a look at the R15 zoning, which is the current zoning, in both the conventional layout, which is just with your 15,000 square foot zoning lots, or your R15 cluster subdivision, which is basically clustering the development and then preserving as much open space as possible. There are a few items that the planning board, I know, is probably going to submit some additional comments on, because I know they're definitely comments that I'm going to be submitting. And that deals with the steep slopes, because there are certain restrictions within the zoning code that requires not to be developed on extremely steep slopes. And right now they have those subdivision layouts affecting those slopes. So one of the things that the planning board is trying to ascertain is how many dwelling units would they be able to really achieve if they had an R15 zoning, both conventional and cluster. So that's some additional requested information that we'll be asking for as part of this process.
I just want to point out that there is the cheat sheet, I'll call it, which is in the alternative section, which is like that pull-out sheet that shows you all of the comparison, the compare and contrast. You get this with this
Yeah.
alternative, you know, I don't know if you looked at that.
Yeah,
So
29,
that-
I-30. Yeah, it's pages I-29, 129 and 130, right? Those.
I believe you. In any case, you know, I guess what I'm asking is similar to what Councilman Fields Tuile mentioned. You know, well, this is a community benefit, for example, which is the, improvement of the intersection. And that's why I guess what I'm asking for Councilman Minichio, if there's something similar like that, that you think that the community should expect along with this development, besides just the ones that are, again, articulated by the applicant already in the plan.
All right, well, if those other surrounding zonings are not in the town, then I have to go back and take a look and just rephrase the question.
Okay, great,
I'll
but
go-
okay, I mean, like, I guess similar to, well, besides, okay, well, if this is gonna require more blasting, then the offset should be that. Or, if this is going to, if this is creating more traffic, then the offset should be that. And if this is not allowing the open space, or you're taking down this many trees, then this offset should be that, something like that. Or, you're increasing the density in the community, and it may get you these impacts. Could it also get you these benefits? So again, that's just food for thought. If there's something in particular that you think makes sense, that you think that should be part and parcel of this project, then I think it would just be helpful if you had those suggestions. So that's
So
all.
I'd like to just make a note of something from Angelo, that the R5 is technically 5,000 square foot lots.
Mhm.
So that is very similar to the village's S5 or S50, and S75 is 7,500 square foot lots. So technically, there is a alternative D sort of demonstrates the conventional layout with smaller lot sizes.
Right.
So that would be similar to the ones you see in the village or some of the surrounding neighborhoods, which is one of the reasons why that alternative was put into the EIS, because some of the surrounding neighborhoods do have that density, and the planning board wanted to see what the subdivision would look like, assuming that type of density was put forth on this particular project.
Right. I'll go back and try to identify it better.
Councilman Meyer.
Yeah, I just have one question. The 10% set aside for affordable housing. I'm just wondering if the developers would consider increasing that amount. That's my most important question.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Councilwoman Feldman.
Yeah, it's me. Hi. Okay. I still think it's too big, but I know he lowered the number of units, but
Is there a
yeah.
number that you have in mind? Because I know that that's consistently you've said that, and I'm just curious.
Yeah.
if there's
I
number-
don't. It's because now the houses are bigger, or at least not on top of each other. So whereas it would have been a much smaller footprint, it's now a much bigger impervious surface. But what I want to talk about tonight is the amount of fill being put along the areas of First and Second Avenue. I didn't see the view shed. It might be in there. Of what that's going to look like from the homes and what the impact of that is. I'd want to know, since Ossining has a history of walls falling down, it's 30 feet high that they want to build these. I'm really just not comfortable with building all these units on top of 30 feet of fill. That makes me uneasy, and I'd like to understand how they're going to secure that, how they're going to secure the wall, how the drainage is going to work in that particular area. Not only for stormwater to run off the top of it, but for anything that soaks in to potentially have the kind of collapse that we had on Secor. And what the residents can expect to be looking at when 30 feet has been added almost against their properties. So that's big importance to me. There's an awful lot of cut and fill going on here. So that concerns me. They've taken out most of the trees. I'm guessing there's a number they're paying into the tree bank. I did see that. Okay, are they still proposing money to the schools? If so, how much?
No.
Okay, well, that's an issue for me. I do believe that the traffic impact should still be addressed and the left turn lane should still be included. I'd like to understand the blasting schedule. Yeah, I agree with Greg. I would like, if we're not getting any other give backs, then we should definitely have more affordable housing supplied. I am happy about the 55 and over. But I believe that I know that in Florida, they have rules about having school children, no school children living in the complexes. I do not know that that flies in New York. I'd like to understand if that's something that can be asked for, or if that's something that is not allowed in New York State to mandate. Any blasting impacts or even suspected impacts to any of the infrastructure on our sidewalks, streets, or anything else should absolutely be mitigated by the developer.
So the Housing for Older Persons Act is federal legislation. And that is what's referenced in the SDIS that the applicant provided. And it does provide the framework under which these types of developments can be marketed as being 55 or over and age restricted. So, you know, we can ask for more clarification, but I can also, you know, try to provide some additional guidance to the town board on that. And you are allowed to put restrictions on the ages of the people who reside on the property as not being under 19.
Okay.
In terms
Um,
of the retaining walls, I just wanted to let you know in terms of the cut and fill and the blasting plan that
Mhm.
has been a concern of both mine and-
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. In terms of the retaining walls
Mhm.
and the cut and fill on the property, that has been a concern of both Dan and mine throughout the different drafts that we've requested from the applicant, and it is additional comments that we will be putting forth as part of our substantive seeker review.
Okay. Also, when Sunshine did the blasting, we had at the cost of the person doing the blasting of the, we had an inspection of the foundation of our ice house and some of our buildings. So would they be providing inspections of the surrounding neighborhood buildings before and after to determine if their blasting caused any detrimental effects? And would they, of course, be responsible for mitigating any problems that were caused?
Okay.
Do you have any other comments, Councilwoman Feldman? For now? It's not gonna be our only opportunity just to comment on this. I just, you know.
Yeah. And are they still providing a path or for residents to get from one side to the park on the other side? So that's out of the project as well, right?
As of now.
Yeah, okay.
There's the easement on the village, the piece of the property that's in the village. I don't know if that's a connector. I don't believe it is. That's it. Open space easement. I don't think that gets us all the way through. Correct? Anybody comment on that or not? No. Nope.
Let me just double check before I confirm one way or the other. There's going to be like a roadway access onto Narragansett Avenue. But right
From
now, and so there'll be, it looks like it might be a little bit of a sidewalk, but we'll have to double check on that and confirm that.
Okay, yeah, I don't know if that's, my understanding from the draft was that that was gonna be blocked off and for first responders only. It's not a drive through, a
Sure.
way that people can drive through. But I'm
Right.
wondering if it's going to be something that, people from the neighborhoods could, well, not with a 30-foot wall from the neighborhood next to it, perhaps from Croton Dam Road.
Thank you. So my additions and questions and comments are, we also received comments today from the county. And they were, particularly pointed out, they're concerned about the 55 and up. Did the town board get all the town board get it or?
I
not?
circulated it yesterday.
Right, okay. So you should have all received the comments from the county and I don't,
Yeah,
and
I
I
didn't
was
see it
going
yet.
to also get included in this. But at some point, if we wanted to have any additional comments or reactions to the county comments, I think that would also be helpful. One of the things that they actually particularly did not like was the 55 and up. I'm not sure I agree with their reasoning on that. But we can try to get some more input about their rationale to understand it. But their basic reasoning was based on the census that we need more housing for everybody and not just for 55 and up. I will also just comment that the school district, I know, had been working closely with the village on their project at the DPW site, and obviously has a bigger impact of students. And I'm pretty sure that they were okay with that because they are starting to see enrollments decline. Just so you know, that's out there. The other thing, I do think that if we look sort of at the bigger picture in the comprehensive plan and what some of the goals were in our new comprehensive plan, and there was a lot of reference, by the way, in this to the 2002 comp plan and 2015 comp plan, but we have a new comp plan. So I'm not saying it was ignored. It wasn't ignored, but it almost seemed like there's a lot of reference to those earlier comp plans. And Glenn, I know you're on this listening. So I want to just say that a number of issues in this comprehensive plan, which I think need to be more critically addressed in this project, that include the ability of people to age in place in this community. So if you're going to have 55 and up housing, it can't be exorbitantly priced, like out of range. And I did just ask our assessor to give us sort of a range of recent sales of townhomes style homes at different price points. And the price points that you're looking to offer these at seem beyond the reach of the people in Ossining. I'm not saying that only people in Ossining would move into them, but certainly if we wanted to have sort of a cycle of where you have an ability of people who are in single family homes to retire or downsize into a market rate townhome to relieve the burden on them of caring for it or anything else, I don't think that this price point actually fits with our community. So I think that's a big consideration. And I also think that maybe what that would then do is you might look to reduce the size of the units, which could potentially positively impact the overall size and scope of the project so that you're not bumping up against the buffers to an extent where you need quite as much blasting or quite as much retaining wall edge as you have built into the project right now, which I do think are going to be big red flags for everybody, again, based on some of what we've seen in this community. And again, all of those projects were vetted and went through all the proper channels. And yet, we unfortunately drive down to the train station, many of us on a regular basis, and see that disaster, which is going to be locked up in litigation for years to come and ends up being a detriment to the community instead of a benefit. So the overall size of the project, I think, should be looked at. The size of the units should be looked at. The cost should be looked at to make it something that is actually in range of affordability of this community for those people who would like to retire. Then I think, the concern about blasting, what the schedule is, I think Councilman Feldman touched on some of the key issues. I also was disappointed in the not huge environmentally sensitive building practices that were referred to. And I think, there was no mention of the stretch code. I want to just make sure that you know that the applicant knows that, in fact, the town did adopt New York stretch and that you are going to have to build higher environmental standards. I'm also disappointed that you are actually relying on the gas line as opposed to building something that is 100% electric. And I think you should consider, and if not, the board demand that you meet at least one of the lead certification levels, if only bronze, so that you have a higher green standard for the building for this project. I also think that you should be planning to build in electric vehicle ready infrastructure to the project, as well as potentially solar and battery energy storage on site, so that you are actually looking to the future and making this project more sustainable over the long term. And that's the direction that everybody's going right now. And I certainly don't see why you wouldn't, building this very large market rate project wouldn't be including those sorts of benefits to everybody. I understand that there are going to not be school children. Councilwoman Feldman, I have a whole bunch of things. So can you
I'm
wait?
sorry, keep going. Absolutely, it can wait.
Is there something very specific to one of the things I just said? Or is it?
Only, it was just to the comprehensive plan, but you may hit on that later, Suzelle.
Okay, so, I'm disappointed that there isn't money for the school district, because no matter what, you want to make sure that you're going to positively impact our future leaders, our future community, and by giving back to the school district to offset, the impact in general, the economic impact of any project. Well, I understand that you're adding to the tax base, which is of course laudable and important, and will, theoretically reduce the overall tax rate. I think that it's I think that it's too bad that you pulled that from the project. And I also think that, there are, while it doesn't look like there are going to be major impacts, traffic impacts, we know that right now there are already difficulties at these intersections. You are very close to those intersections, as I think Councilwoman Fields Tweel pointed out, and having a benefit of improving something and leaving the community better than you started when you started the project, I think again is something that you should consider very, very seriously, to add a benefit to the community. I know that I think we had talked about things like sidewalks and community gardens. And I think the county actually did talk specifically about opening up walkability and access. And I think that's something, again, that as we're looking at, sort of micro mobility options, making it easier for people to get around the community without single passenger vehicles. A lot of those pieces were taken out, and I understand why. You don't have the same kind of commuter traffic that you might have. But we are looking to make it easier for people to be mobile without having to get in and out of their car all the time. And it would actually probably make it easier for you on parking too, if you made your project more open to those sorts of mobility options, as we're looking to bring in e-bikes and e-scooters, and I don't know what, maybe there'll be motorized walkers soon too. In any case, I think there's a lot of things that you really, have taken into consideration, which I appreciate. And I know that the 55 and up was one of the big ones. I again, not 100% sure about how this, not allowing people under 19. I hear what Christy's saying. And ultimately, I don't think that it would, even if you did allow school children and it was only one person 55 and up, I don't know that it would have nearly the impact that the last project had, which was, I think, 22 to 29 proposed school children. And it may or may not be good or bad for the school to have a couple more kids coming out of here. So I'm not sure that it would be such a horrible thing, but that's just my opinion on that subject. So again, I think I hit all that. So in terms of the comprehensive plan, some of the other things that, we did look at, and the reason that we included, there's a lot of, sensitivity to environmental impacts. And I think that, this project in some ways, I think has greater negative environmental impacts than the original, because you're not clustering everything up on top. And again, that's just, I think that if there was a way to consider, as Councilman Fields Tweel mentioned, I think, or Councilman Feldman, where the siting of the trees are to leave as much of the mature growth as you possibly could. That's ultimately going to be a nicer looking project too, because it'll just fit in better with the environment. And it maybe you can't cram in quite as many units, but maybe get a nicer community. So I guess that's it for me, and I'll turn it back over to Councilwoman Feldman if you had additional comments.
I just wanted to speak to your mention of the comprehensive plan. I had meant to, the applicant keeps referring to two previous versions of the plan. And we do have a new comprehensive plan that specifically talks about preservation of green spaces and maintaining the character of neighborhoods. So probably the applicant should take a closer look at that.
I like to say maintain characteristics, because I believe that character is a loaded word, and I don't think that it's
characteristics. Okay.
If you want to talk about looking at architectural characteristics or building,
right.
things like that. I think that that's important to consider. I think when you talk about community character, it's really kind of a loaded word.
I meant characteristics.
No, I
as in,
know, I'm not.
How many houses are on a lot? and how
Councilwoman Tillman,
many-
believe me, it is not just you. This is a common phrase, and I just want to point out how I feel about it.
Okay, I would like to refer him to review that chapter of our recently adopted comprehensive plan. I'm sure it's worded properly.
Hopefully, I'm sure there's a couple of, I'm sure there's some.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some, yeah.
Yes. Okay, so we can go back around again if anybody, now that everybody's heard everybody else's comments, if anybody has any additional comments, having heard these comments, if they wanted to add anything. And I just want to ask Valerie, if you, in terms of the county comments, could you just talk to that a little bit? Or Chris,
The county comments?
Yeah.
So the county had, I mean, their biggest concern, I mean, so there was like five comments. One was dealing with green buildings, technology and recycling, which I think the applicant can easily respond to. Another is county sewer improvements dealing with inflow and infiltration. That is a common response from the county. So that's something that gets looked at every project. Then the other two were a little bit more substantial. One deals with the street connectivity, specifically trying to tie the project into First Street and Second Avenue, First and Second Avenues, and also additional connections to Narragansett Avenue to try to make it more of a street connection and network. And then the last comment really focused on the 55 and older, that the county felt that the proposed project did not really meet the comprehensive plan because the comprehensive plan noted that it needed more like housing options, specifically potentially for families, and that they noted that the unincorporated population is older than 55, 45% is older than 55. So they felt that this shows that there's enough housing for seniors already in the town of Ossining. I tend to have a little bit of a different perspective on that comment because I feel that there's one of the issues that we see in the housing market and also just housing in general, affordability, is the housing cycle is a little bit broken because usually a lot of times, as people age, they will downsize and they will then open up that single family home for a new family to move into. But if you can't afford anywhere or don't have anywhere else to downsize to, then you remain in place and you stay within your house. And then there's another house off the market for a family to move into. So theoretically, if this development were to develop specifically for senior housing targeted for, the income levels that seniors within the town of Ossining would be able to move into, you would have potentially people selling their house, potentially moving into those units, and then that would open up other units for families.
Okay.
It also occurred to me that these look like there are a lot of stairs in these are, 3-story units. And I know that a lot of seniors looking to age in place are looking for 1-floor units. So I don't know if this design is really conducive to what we're hoping for to achieve some of our aging in place.
I think that's a good point. I didn't notice that there is an option for each unit to add an elevator. So I just don't know if that's very realistic in terms of what that would add to the cost of the unit and make it prohibitively expensive again. But I do think it's a really good point that, if you're looking to, I know that we do have townhomes certainly in the town with two levels. And I just wonder if the ones that aren't the most sought after are the ones that are not. So it's a good point. Any other comments? And I just also want to thank Councilman Meyer for the comment about, affordability. I think, again, we're talking a lot about that. We're seeing the impacts of the economy right now. Obviously, we're seeing ups and downs, and we feel certainly like we're going into a downturn and looking at these very expensive townhomes that may be, again, beyond the reach of many in our community, I think gives us pause. So unless there's any other comments, I think
Today.
we can, I think I just want to say thank you again. Thanks to the applicant for preparing a very lengthy supplemental draft environmental impact study, and to all of the experts that we have online with us. I don't know if any of you had any other comments that you wanted to throw in, or, you know, again, we certainly want to know what the types of impacts are that are give us most cause for concern, to see if we can address those as we move forward.
So just procedurally, I've been taking notes, and, when it's by Zoom like this, we have the benefit of the recording. So what I was thinking I would do is try to just like do a write-up that kind of summarizes the themes and the different environmental areas where the topics that the board members brought up are kind of focused on. And then we can bring that back to the board, and you can take a look at it, see if there are any changes or additions that you want to see made. And then we can have it submitted to the planning board to be included in the public comment period that will be addressed by the applicant in the final environmental impact statement. And, perhaps the applicant may want to present to the board before then and maybe address some of these issues, but there's been a lot discussed tonight and a lot to digest, so we can cross that bridge.
All right.
I have a question. I'm not sure if it was Valerie or the supervisor mentioned that there's a study that said enrollment is going down in the school district. I'm just curious, when did that study come out? And
I mean, I spoke with I spoke with one of the school board trustees. I think it was one of their, recent enrollment projections.
Okay.
So you can get it from the school board meetings, I think, is where we could find it. But we can also, certainly ask for it.
Okay. I mean, I'd like to.
And it's not relevant for this project right now because we're projecting no school children.
Right. No. Okay. Yeah, I'd like to take a look at that and understand, what that means. Because as I've had children go through the school district quite recently, and I know people who have kids that are still in elementary school, whether there's a projection that there's school enrollment is going down, there's still overcrowding. So I'll talk to someone on the school board, and see if I can get a copy and understand it better.
Yeah, I mean, it's usually, I can't remember when they do their enrollment projections, but it's the same time every year. It's like usually the same meeting every year, and Southern Westchester BOCES does the study, and I'm sure that you can get at least the top line copy of it to see from the presentation to the school board. And they usually do it before they start working on their budget, so it might even be around now.
Thank you.
So with that, again, I thank you all, wonderful town board, for all your thoughtful comments, and for everybody else who has participated in this process to date. And I would ask for a motion to go back to our regular meeting, and we will ask for, well, I'm going to start with announcements, but then we will ask for our wonderful deputy town clerk, Martha Kudisaka, to take over. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, so announcements, here we go. Ossety River Jam, thank you, Valerie. I don't know if you're staying on, I can't remember, but and thank you, Dan and Andrea. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon.
Good night.
Ossety River Jam, our rebranded summer concert series with Food Truck Fridays and craft breweries, is back this Friday, July 29th with, drum roll please, Ossety local and favorite, the Mike Risco Band. Stay tuned for the food truck lineup and make plans to head down to the waterfront at about 5 p.m. for dinner. Stay for the concert at 7. In case you have any questions about weather, stay tuned to social media, and at Town of Austining for up to the minute information. Last Friday, we had KJ Denner perform with the New York unit, and due to a little summer storm at 6 or so, we were able to postpone the start till 8. It was a great night. So just again, stay tuned to what's happening if we get another one of those rolling through. This week promises to be a repeat of the last with another local fave, Mike Risco Band. There's more free summer entertainment with the summer acoustic series at Market Square Wednesdays at 7 p.m. this week with Gary Adamson. Pro tip, if you attend the summer acoustic series, make sure to be ready to defend your chess game with Chess with Chavez. Also on Mondays, jazz at Henry Gordine Park at 6:30 p.m. Next concert is Monday, August 8th with the Mala Waldron Quartet. On Tuesday nights at 7 p.m., there was the Family Summer Entertainment Series. Next week, there will be a comedian, Ned Gelfars, at Market Square. Don't forget to grab dinner from a local Austining restaurant as you spend your summer nights in Austining's beautiful parks. And sometimes Market Square. I guess that's a park. Is that a park? The Austining schools are collecting school supplies now through August 23rd with several drop-off locations around town. Donate new school supplies like crayons and markers, number 2 pencils. Don't give any of those soft pencils or those super hard pencils because they don't like to write with those. I didn't even know kids still wrote with pencils. Post-its are I know they use them in school, but no, keep Post-its away from me. I'll buy them and give them away. Composition notebooks and more to one of the following locations until 8/23. Mike Risco Music School, Austining Public Library, Austining School District Administrative Office at 400 Executive Boulevard, Value Drugs in Briarcliff, and Prescription Plus. Westchester Collaborative Theater continues their parking lot plays. I think they moved them outside of the parking lot, and outdoor short play festival this weekend. I guess it's weather contingent. Performances will be Friday and Saturday at 7 p.m., Saturday at 2 p.m., and Sunday at 3 p.m. Grab your tickets now at www.wctheater.org. A quick note about an upcoming road closure. The town of Newcastle will be closing Hawks Avenue, they were part of it, starting tomorrow, July 27th through August 2nd, excluding Saturday and Sunday, from the hours of 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. to complete some necessary road repairs to stabilize the roadway in anticipation of repaving. Happy days for those of you who live on Hawks. A large excavator and other machinery will be working on the road. Provisions for emergency vehicles will be made. Are there any announcements from my board colleagues? All right. First off, I'm going to go into my administrative report now. So first off, congratulations to Austining Police Chief Kevin Sylvester, who was sworn in last night as president of the New York State Association of Chiefs of Police. He now sits as president of both the Westchester County Chiefs of Police Association and the State Association. Chief Sylvester is the first from Westchester County since 2008 to hold this position, and just the 14th time since its formation in 1901. Congratulations, Chief, and thanks for making Austining proud. On our agenda this evening, we have a resolution to approve going out to bid for replacing the roof at the Highway Department Mechanics Garage. As part of the 2022 budget process, Highway Superintendent Pete Connolly brought in a roof expert to evaluate the condition of the roofs at the Highway Department and prioritize replacement or repairs. The Mechanics Garage was top priority and recommended for replacement in 2022, as in it can't wait any longer. The bid specs were developed and vetted by our roofing expert, Andy Teese and Pete Connolly, and we budgeted for this project in our capital plan for 2022. It's important that we get this project underway soon. I'm happy to report that we are getting closer and closer to revealing our new Town of Austining website. This project has been a number of years in the making. We were slightly delayed with COVID and other projects, but thanks to the expert help of our website wizard, Dean Pacchiana, and graphic design guru, Brian Sheridan, we think the public will find the website much easier to navigate and find the information they are looking for. So stay tuned for more on that very soon. Speaking of technology upgrades, our town clerk, Suzanne Donnelly, has been working hard to digitize many of our processes and documents. In an effort to make the town less paper heavy, she's recommended that the town board adopt a resolution this evening to encourage the use of electronic record keeping in our departments. And that's it for my report. Are there any liaison reports from any of my colleagues?
I would like to say that our concert series has gotten so popular, and the food trucks and vendors and musicians have been parking near where in the trailer parking. So if you're going to launch a boat, it may not be a good idea to do so on a Friday. We really need to take a closer look at that. I don't think it's feasible, or it's difficult. So keep that in mind should you want to launch a boat at the Aspen Boat Ramp on Friday evening between 7 and 10.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions from town board? All right, with that, I ask if there are any public comments on any of the items on our upcoming agenda that we're going to be approving resolutions. If anybody has any comments on any of the agenda items, please raise your virtual hand and we will recognize you. And seeing none. Waiting another minute. Okay. Seeing no hands raised, I'm going to turn it over to Martha.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Approval of minutes, regular meeting, July 12th, 2022. Resolved that the town board of the town of Austining hereby approves the July 12th, 2022 minutes of the regular meeting as presented.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Approval of minutes, special meeting, July 19th, 2022. Resolved that the town board of the town of Austining hereby approves the July 19th, 2022 minutes of the regular meeting as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Approval of voucher detail report. Resolved that the town board of the town of Austining hereby approves the voucher detail report dated July 26, 2022 in the amount of $624,540.53.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Resolution of support Ryder Park Improvements Grant, whereas the town of Austining owns parkland on 43B Morningside Drive, known as Ryder Memorial Park, and whereas Ryder Park contains many recreational assets that are beneficial to the community, including baseball fields, tennis courts, fitness, and passive walking trails, and the town wishes to implement improvements to the many recreational amenities at Ryder Park, while also addressing and mitigating concerns relating to drainage and wetlands. And whereas these improvements require preliminary engineering and the development of final design and construction documents for bid in order to achieve implementation. And whereas funding is currently available through the Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation Environmental Protection Fund Grants Program for parks to support project planning for parks improvements, including the improvements the town wishes to complete at Ryder Park. Now therefore be resolved that the town board of the town of Austining supports submitting a grant application to the Environmental Protection Fund Grants Program for parks to complete preliminary engineering and the development of final design and construction documents for bid for improvements to Ryder Park.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
So this is one of 3 consolidated funding application grants that we're applying for this year. We did apply for it before and we did not get it. If one of the things that we've made some improvements to the grant application, one of the things that we think will make it a good deal stronger will be to include this resolution of support from the town board. If you want information about any of the other grants, you can view last week's work session on YouTube. We certainly are hopeful that we will be successful with all of our applications this year and be ready to get moving on some exciting projects with state support. Questions or discussion? Yes.
I'm wondering if I should abstain from this vote since these grants were worked on in my.
Oh yeah, one abstention. One abstention? Is one enough?
I think one for all of them. Or do I have to abstain for all three?
No,
grants?
there's just
That's
one.
not me.
No.
Oh, Greg moved, so.
Yeah, I think I'm okay now.
Okay, good. Okay. I know he moved, but then I was just thinking like, okay, whatever. I'm not gonna even say it because I'm just gonna get us in trouble. Okay, so with that, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions?
Abstain.
Thank you.
Finance Audit Town of Austining 2021, resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Austining hereby acknowledges that in accordance with Section 35 of the General Municipal Law, the 2021 audit of the Town of Austining financial statements and supplementary information and 2021 statement of cash receipts, disbursements, and cash balances for the Town Justice Court have been distributed to and reviewed by the Town Board, and said report shall be on the file with the Office of the Town Clerk.
Motion?
So moved.
Second,
So at our last legislative session, we received a report on the 2021 audit, which was clean as a whistle. Thank you to our Comptroller Dale Brennan, Deputy Comptroller Liz Nakari, Budget Director Victoria Caffarelli, the entire finance team, plus our department heads for the work they all do during audit season and every day to keep the finances of the town in tip-top shape. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed?
Retainer Tulis and Gregor LLP, resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Austining retains Tulis and Gregor LLP for special district legal work at an hourly rate of $300.
Motion?
So moved.
second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
New York State Liquor Authority Special Event Permit Application, Austining Fire Department Inspection. Resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Austining hereby authorizes the supervisor to sign the landlord authorization form for the New York State Liquor Authority Special Event Permit Application made by the Austining Fire Department for the Austining Fire Department Parade on August 5th, 2022 at Lewis Engle Park. And be further resolved that the applicant will provide proof of insurance and the letter of indemnity to the town and form acceptance with council to the town.
Motion?
So moved.
second,
Do you have to abstain, Councilman Minichio? It's just a thought. All
You're
those in
right.
favor?
He's on, chief.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed?
Authorized to bid Highway Department Mechanic Shop Roof Replacement. Resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Austining hereby issues a request for bids for the Highway Department Mechanic Shop Roof Replacement Project with bids due back to the office of the Town Clerk by 10 a.m. on Thursday, August 25th.
Motion?
So moved.
second,
Again, thank you to Highway Superintendent Pete Connolly as well as Andy Teese for helping us get here. All those in favor?
aye,
Anybody opposed?
Maintenance and retention, maintenance and retention of electronic records. Whereas at its regular meeting on August 11, 2020, the Town Board adopted the retention and disposition schedule for local government records, LGS1, issued pursuant to Article 57-A of the Arts and Cultural Affairs Law, containing legal minimum retention periods for local government records. And whereas pursuant to Article 57-A, only those records will be disposed of that are described in LGS1 after the records have met the minimum retention period described in the schedule, and only those records will be disposed of that do not have sufficient administrative, fiscal, legal, or historical value to merit retention beyond established legal minimum periods. And whereas pursuant Arts and Cultural Affairs Law, Section 57.19, each local government shall have one officer who is designated as Records Management Officer. In towns, the town clerk shall be Records Management Officer. And whereas a Commissioner of Education for New York State promulgated regulations in Part 185 regarding records of public corporations. And whereas 8 NYCCR 185.2C notes, the Records Management Officer shall initiate, coordinate, and promote the systematic management of the local government records in consultation and cooperation with other local officers. And whereas 8 NYCCR 185.7F provides digital images of public records may be stored on electronic media, and such electronic records may replace paper originals or micrographic copies of these records. In order to ensure accessibility and intelligibility for the life of these records, local governments must follow the procedure described in Section 185.8 of this part. And whereas 89Y SCRR 185.8 retention and preservation of electronic records provides in part, a local government shall ensure that records retention requirements are incorporated into any plan and process for design, redesign, or substantial enhancement of an information system that stores digital records. B, a local government shall ensure that electronic records are not rendered unusable because of the changing technology. Therefore, their retention and preservation requirements are met. C, a local government shall develop and maintain up-to-date documentation about all permanent or archival electronic records. D, a local government shall prepare and store in a secure off-site facility copies of archival electronic records in order to safeguard against loss. And E, the local government shall institute specific maintenance procedures for electronic media containing permanent or archival electronic records. And whereas to the extent possible, the town of Austining is serious of utilizing electronic and or digital records in place of paper records or micrograph copies. Now therefore be resolved, the town of Austining shall maintain all digitally created records in native digital format for the retention period set up in the most recent rendition of the LGS1, and be further resolved that the town shall retain and preserve its electronic records defined as those records stored on electronic media that can be read or possessed only by means of a computer, and according to the requirements 8 NYC-RR 185.8 of the regulations of the Commissioners of Education, and be further resolved that the town clerk as records management officer, in consultation with other local officers, including but not limited to elected officials, town supervisor, budget officer, counsel to the town, receiver of taxes, assessor, comptroller, building inspector, town engineer, and other departments that are designees shall determine which non-electronic copies of records for which there are corresponding electronic records may be disposed of when such non-electronic copies are no longer needed for reference, historical, or administrative purpose.
Do I have a motion?
We all know I have a soft spot for some paper things, but there's a motion.
Second.
Okay, so first, I believe, and Victoria, just correct me if I'm wrong, did not our receiver of taxes, the Honorable Holly Perlois, bring this to our attention originally?
I think it was a combination of both.
And
our-
so grateful to her as well as to our clerk, Suzanne Donnelly, for bringing this to our attention and pushing us to adopt it. And I'm guessing that our council town had a good look at it and made it something that made sense for us. So thank you to everybody who had input into this. We certainly are moving into the electronic age in a big way. And I think that the less reliant we have to be on paper, the less necessary it is to bring these types of things to the beach, the better off we'll all be. But yes, we do sometimes actually need paper here and there, but we don't need to maintain the records in paper form. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? And also, I just want to add that when I started my career in advertising and in radio and TV, and there really is a market for you, Martha Kulisaka, for how fast you read. Like you can read all those little disclaimers at the bottom. So I just want to let you know, have another alternate career. Like you can have it as a secondary career. You don't need to read the clerk's office.
Thank you, thank you. Okay,
You vote, all those in favor, we voted, right? Yes.
I don't, I think, did we vote? Yes, okay, good. Okay.
Yes, it was unanimous.
Okay,
Thanks.
resolution, local law number 5 of 2022, amendments to chapter 73 of the town code, community choice aggregation energy program. Whereas in 2015, the town board enacted chapter 73 of the town code entitled community choice aggregation energy program, which is administered by Sustainable Westchester and provides a more stable and potentially lower energy costs by negotiating locked-in pricing for residential and small business properties in all the participating municipalities in Westchester County. And whereas Sustainable Westchester recently presented the town board with a new solar credit offering, Opta Community Distributed Generation, that provides additional savings to eligible and participating properties and will prioritize solar credit savings to low and moderate income households. Whereas to implement this new solar credit offering, the Public Service Commission requires participating municipalities to amend their local law to include specific language about the solar credit offerings. And whereas the town board opened a duly noticed public hearing on the proposed local law at its meeting on Tuesday, July 12, 2022, and members of the public having the opportunity to attend and be heard, the public hearing was closed on July 12, 2022. And whereas said local law has been on the desk of the members of the town board for at least 7 days, exclusive on Sunday, prior to the adoption of this resolution. Now therefore be resolved, the town board hereby adopts a negative declaration pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, determining this action does not have the potential to have any significant adverse environmental impacts as the local law is authorized by the state, and will provide property owners in the unincorporated town with more affordable options for clean energy. And be further resolved, the town board, after due deliberation, finds that in furtherance of the safety, health, and well-being of the persons and property in the town, it is in the best interest of the town to adopt a local law, and the board hereby adopts local law number 5 of 2022. And be further resolved, the town clerk is directed to enter said local law in the minutes of this meeting into the local law book for the town of Boston, to publish said minutes in a newspaper published in the town, if any, or in such newspaper published in the county in which town may be located, having a circulation in such town. And affidavits of said publication shall be filed with the town clerk, and to file a copy of said local law with the Secretary of State of New York.
Motion.
So moved.
Second.
So this local law will enable the town to participate in Sustainable Westchester's opt-out community solar program, as mentioned in the resolution that we heard about from Sustainable Westchester. And we hope that we will be rolling this out in the fall. I believe that because it is a local law, it calls for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Feldman,
Aye.
Councilmember Manicchio,
Aye.
Councilmember Meyer,
Aye.
Councilmember Fields Toohill.
Aye.
Okay.
And how about me?
Supervisor Levenberg, I'm so sorry.
I also vote aye. Mine shop liver here. Okay.
Okay,
Next
so resolution adopting brighter conferencing policy for the town of Boston. Whereas as part of the 2022 budget, the state enacted Public Officers Law, Statute 103-8, which allows members of municipal public bodies to participate in public meetings remotely under the circumstances provided in the law, so long as the municipality legislative board adopts a local law and video conferencing regulations in furtherance of such. Whereas at its July 12, 2022 legislative session, the town board adopted local law number 4 of 2022, allowing members of all town boards subject to the open meetings law to participate in meetings via video conferencing as prescribed in Public Officers Law Statute 103-8. And whereas the town board considered video conferencing regulations at its July 19, 2022 work session, and now therefore be it resolved, the town board hereby adopts the town of Boston video conferencing policy dated July 26, 2022. And be it further resolved, the town board reserves the right to revisit and modify, amend, and or repeal as necessary said video conferencing policy in the future by resolution of a majority of the town board. And be it further resolved, the video conferencing policy shall be made available on the town's website, www.townofboston.com, and hard copy shall be available in the town clerk's office, the town supervisor's office, and the town building department for review by members of the public upon request during normal business hours.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So this policy was discussed at length in our last work session. Remember, we are currently allowed to be holding meetings remotely via an executive order from the governor, but this policy ties to the local law adopted at the last meeting to allow for video conferencing as part of town meetings in the longer term. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you.
Contract Nexus Creative resolved that the town board of the town of Boston authorize an additional allowance of $16,000 for mechanical, electrical, plumbing, structural sub-consultants under the town's contract with Nexus Creative Architecture and Design, Tarrytown, New York, 10591, dated June 10th, 2021, for design, development, contract documents, and construction administration for the renovation of the community center kitchen.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So we approved our contract with Nexus Creative in June 2021. And although the board approved all of the terms of the contract, the amount that was initially approved did not include the amount necessary for the sub-consultants for mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, which are very critical pieces to kitchen renovation and were articulated in the contract. So we would just like to make sure that we approve that. Now, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Okay. Correspondence to be received and filed. Resolved that the town board of the town of Boston hereby accepts the following correspondence: town planning board minutes, June 15, 2022, and the architecture review board resolution for 68 Summerstown Road from June 15, 2022.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Are we now up to the part of visitor recognition on any topic whatsoever? Is there anybody here who would like to address the board on any topic whatsoever? Please raise your virtual hand and you will have 4 minutes. And not seeing any. I would ask for a motion to adjourn to executive session for advice of counsel.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Have a wonderful week. Thank you for joining us. Hope to see you at River Jam and other places around the community for all of the wonderful events that and programs that we have planned. Have a fantastic week. See you soon.